Hello, welcome back to the channel. And yes, I am clean shaved. I do look about 12, but here we are. I had a accident while shaving. But this is going to be a new way of doing hiking vlogs now, because I just used to go and talk about the places, but instead I'm going to use it to tell stories of topics that I find interesting. Hence why I am going to be talking about stuff like I would make into documentaries or short film, but I don't have the financial means to travel there, and it would be a logistical nightmare just to go there to film a video at the moment where I don't earn money off YouTube. But I'm going to start this with a story that I've always found interesting. Don't get me wrong, I'm a male, I like volcanoes, and this eruption changed the fabric of society in the world. It happened in Indonesia, and this is the eruption of Mount Tambora, and I'm telling you this from Fan Forest. I'm going to start here at this lake, but I don't know if many of you have heard of Mount Tambora. It is located on the Indonesian island of Tambora. So I like aircraft flying over. And it's not far from the island of Java, which had Jakarta, I think I'm pronouncing that right, which is the capital of Indonesia. It's located on it. Nice little waterfall running from the pond here, and just flows into the river. But Mount Tambora has always been like this monumental, like masterpiece of a mountain in the area. But not many local sultans, tribes all knew what it was and what it was capable of. They would discover that when it came to April 1816, when it would first make its rumbles. Indonesia was under temporary control by the British. It was originally a Dutch colony, part of the Dutch East Indies, but during the Napoleonic Wars, the Netherlands were occupied by the French. Napoleon Bonaparte actually invaded the Netherlands and made a satellite state for the French. But when the rumble started on April the 5th, 1816, Governor Stamford Raffles, who would be incidentally the founder of Singapore later on, decided to investigate because he thought it was cannon fire. So he scrambled a couple of ships together, including himself, and went to investigate what was going on in Tambora. But to his shock, it wasn't cannon fire. It was the first eruption of Tambora. It was days before that they were feeling earthquakes and just thought it was a natural thing, especially the tribes people. Because normally we would think, okay, first minor eruption, we would leave the area, evacuate. But the local people and the British stayed during this eruption, as they didn't really know much about it. But the eruption only lasted a good couple of hours before it would subside and go back to small earthquakes and rumblings. But it would only take 5 days for the big eruption to happen, and it would leave Java in chaos. Before we carry on with the story, this is like a real dense, thick woodland. You can tell in Caerphilly, but there's a little tree fort there. We're going to have a look at that. But we're carrying on with what happened in Java when it came to, when it came to April the 10th. The volcano blew its top, sending plummets of ash into the air, into the atmosphere, cascading part of the rocks into the air, then down the mountain, crushing everything that was in front of it, tribal homes of the people who live there. A nice little tree folk that is. You can see the entrance is very small. And then the pyroclastic flow devastated the area. Governor Stanton Raffles actually helped local people get out of the area while they could. But they would discover later on that it was a VEI-7 eruption. So basically that is like the volcanic version of the Richter scale. And with the evacuation and devastation, it wasn't fully safe to go around Tambora, because as soon as that happened, a tsunami would hit and many more people would die. But amongst all the deaths, microbes would form and pestilence would happen around the area. And with that was another almost tragedy of Tambora. Dysentery, cholera was all discovered around that area. And if there was a net positive, when a local sultan relocated back into the area, he brought a lot of slaves with him, which changed the entire area's demographic, and it would change the fabric of Indonesia. But with pestilence, the devastation of the volcano eruption, Tambora would have a massive effect to the world, and it would cool the planet by 2 degrees, which was catastrophic for the rest of the planet. With the planet cooling like 2 degrees, we worry with climate change in this like modern era, but then they didn't really know about it, and news didn't travel fast. You would have waited weeks or months to even know about the Tambora explosion. So this was a shock to many people around the world, when is another fort being built there, it looks like. When they discover that the planet is cooling down and the catastrophic hit of what happened in Indonesia, I couldn't even get the words out. But this eruption landed smack bang in a period of history called the 100 Days. There's a hole over there, let's go and have a look at that. The 100 Days was basically where Napoleon escaped his island prison of Elba and went back to reclaim the French monarchy. It looks like an old fire pit actually, before we carry on. Probably a couple of campers created a fire pit. There's a trail down there, but we're going to carry on going up. There's something I want to show you around here. But while he escaped his island prison, the earth was slowly cooling down and summer would be nearby. But then by the time it comes to defeating Napoleon at Waterloo in Belgium, it was a big issue. Mass unemployment was going to happen, and demobilization of troops. And that would probably make things worse, because political radicalism was coming, with especially the issues of Peterloo Massacre, the Merthyr Rising, the Chartist Uprising of Newport, which stuff I have covered in the past, especially the Merthyr Rising. This is a nice little fort, we'll have a proper look at it. And there comes the year without summer. It's another free fort by Earth. This one kind of looks more like it's built into a shape of a tent. It's not quite finished though. I do feel like when I'm in this woodland by Earth, the Blair Witch might come and get me. Old school reference. This is a found footage. This could be a found footage video. If any director finds this or film producer, credit me, the Blair Witch is real. Let's just move on and carry on with the story of Mount Tambora. Right, before we carry on with the year without summer, I'm trying to get the camera back in focus. Where are we going now here? We'll have a little bit of a callback to my first Exploring with Randonautica video. It took me a year, so let's go to that callback now. But I'm going to start the year without summer in the summer of 1816 in Britain, where I am right now, in Britain. I'll get into Wales, where I'm specifically at in Britain, but 1816 started normally in Britain, like the typical weather that we get, rain, which wasn't new to the people, but the big thing is it was slightly warmer. Normally, even the rain was slightly warmer, but then it would transition into being cold after the eruption, and it was worrying because it just rained all of the time. It just rained, it didn't stop raining, and these downpours were causing mass flooding in areas, and it would cause the big issue for a lot of farmers. This was at the start of the industrial era for mass manufacturing of food. Crops were failing and people were starting to starve, and here, me in Wales can say that when doing research for this video, I found out a lot of Welsh people fled the country to Scotland to try and find some sort of solace in having non-failing crops and probably better weather so they can live more comfortably. But in Scotland they were suffering the same issue. But then rural riots would happen from this, and radicalism would start, like I said, with the political radicalisms of the Chartists. But Britain weren't that bad off from the effects of Tambora, because our Royal Navy and merchants were very good on the sea, so well-established trade routes kept Britain from starving. But the colony over the Irish Sea did struggle in Ireland, because a big thing would happen, because they would suffer the first potato famine. Right, the main thing when you talk about like this potato famine, we can't get it mixed up with the big potato famine that happened in the mid-1800s, which was caused really through the British government. That was like a state famine. This one was a lot smaller in scale. It did kill thousands of people, but it wasn't caused by any government body. The effects of Tambora absolutely ripped into the Irish potato crop. As soon as that crop fails, Ireland would feel the hit massively. They were migrating towards Britain, hoping for a better life, but that wouldn't happen because they were struggling there. British government did help Ireland out, was giving them some of the stuff they imported in from other countries, but then again Ireland still struggled because a big thing was happening in Ireland. The tuberculosis was spreading due to the downpours of rain that they were suffering as well, and cholera and all the similar stuff was happening through pestilence, because tuberculosis was a big issue during the eruption of Tambora, because it weren't just Ireland and parts of Britain that suffered it. Italy, where it was first detected, struggled massively with it, and I can see a lot of mud by here, which is going to be fun to walk over. And we'll get more into mainland Europe and Italy's part in Tambora, but this spread everywhere because the issue was the first year without summer in Tambora eruption that it saw this disease spread. And I think I'm going to have to just walk over this mud for a minute. My issue with doing outdoory content like exploring, hiking, is mud. A lot of... With tuberculosis subsiding, there was another disease which spread to Britain, which we will get into when we talk about the subcontinent of India, or the British Raj, but we'll get to that now. But the second year without summer, this mud is a bit better now. Second year without summer was more colder than it was wet. Crops did fail, but luckily the maritime routes kept Britain from starving. And the big thing was stuff started freezing over. The crops were cold, and it wasn't just Britain that suffered it, which we will go to our next part of the world, North America, which suffered the same thing. But with the crops and the rivers freezing, it was less impactful, I would say, compared to the first year without summer, where everything was flooded and drowned. Now everything was more damaged. I wonder what's happening there. There's a uprooted tree. Sorry. Now everything was just frozen over. And this is where the political radicalism would happen, with the mass unemployment, because the demobilisation after the Napoleonic Wars. The iron industry was mainly failing due to the loss of demand, and coal was starting to become an industry. This is where the radicalism came. This is where you see stuff like the Chartist uprising in Newport, the Mercer Rising, the Peterloo massacre, and many other things like the Rebecca riots as well. Especially Wales didn't go quiet. But when we get up to the top of this hill, we're going to talk about mainland Europe. An uprooted tree. So let's get in here and talk about Europe. Yeah, I'm tall. Didn't die. So, mainland Europe. What happened here was probably the strangest, because in Germany they had similar issues where the river was frozen, but also there was another big issue with Germany, that they really struggled, the German states, to get food. It was a crop failure. Starvation was a huge problem, which is fine, but it was very dry was the issue. They had bad drought at one point, so Germany's crops were either flooding or they were failing due to basically mass starvations. So what's by here? Let's have a look. To move on to another country that really struggled was Italy. Italy had brown snow falling in June. They had snow falling in June, and it was just constantly dark in Italy. And the big thing was the darkness in Italy. It was a big book that came out called the Bologna Prophecy, which would see, I think the thing I'm looking for is gone, which sucks. It was a roundabout by here. This is a nice little bit of a valley, blocked off, so it could be a cave or a mine shaft. But the Bologna Prophecy stated that sunspots would block out the sun and the darkness would come and God would slight his wrath. And with Mount Tambora erupting, it kind of felt like that, but it wasn't to be. And the main thing was that tuberculosis outbreak as well came from Italy. Originated in Italy. It's a little pond by here, but Italy did feel the effects the worst due to, oh, it is still there, we'll get in now. It's still there. But we'll come back to Italy, we'll have a look at this. This by here. This, I don't know if you remember from the Random Nautica video, this is like a part from the tractor end in the car. No one knows how it got here. It's just almost become like a local landmark. By here. I would move it and keep it. But nature has fully reclaimed her, I suppose. I am going to head back there. I'm a bit far away from where I want to be. I want to show you this. With the places like Italy struggling with prophecies, snow and tuberculosis, is a different problem like in France and Switzerland, just over the Alps, because they struggled with flooding. But we'll come back to Switzerland a bit later on in the story. So I want to go over to North America when I get down from this blimmin' hill. Well, I made it down the hill, but I'm going to stop for a minute and do North America. North America had a weird year without summer, to say the least, because a lot of positives. I know the camera's a bit wonky in the scene, or maybe find it, but it had a lot of positive connotations to it. The main reason will be the westward migration, which we will go into very shortly. But it would start in July mainly, where crops were frozen over, and by the time Independence Day come, instead of having outdoor parties, which you would expect in the warm summer heat of America, kids were sledding down hills and keeping warm by the fire. That's what the type of summer had. It was almost winter conditions, but like with crops failing as well, it did have issues for a lot of people. And one of those people was the former president, I think he was the second president of the United States if I was correct, Thomas Jefferson, which made him bankrupt with his crop failures on his farm. But the year without summer did have its positive effects on America. With all these crops failing, new pastures had to be laid and people had to try and get better land to use. And they would travel out west into the burnt over districts, and this would help with the discovery of Illinois, and great cities like Chicago was built out of this. And only 2 years later, Illinois would be admitted to the Union. But a big thing politically which would tear America came from the year without summer, and that was the abolition movement. With them moving westwards, the abolitionist slavery movement pretty much began, with many of the black residents moving out west for new life and mixing in with their white compatriots. And the year without summer's effects on America wasn't that great because it felt like more positive came out of it. Back down the hill we go. So let's head back to the front of the area because I got somewhere else to show you across the road before we end the video off. China. Well, China is a very dry country anyway, and it is very humid and dense, and it just went to a new extreme thanks to the effects of the eruption of Tambora during the year without summer. They did have a summer, but it was a lot of drought. Crops are failing, the rice crops are failing, and the failing Qing dynasty were now feeling the effects. And when they subsided the famine, many people in China decided to do things differently. They stopped planting rice. These farmers wanted quick cash. They wanted not to subsidise the empire or the emperor. They wanted to make themselves rich. And then they decided to do the one thing that would cause the misfortunes of the nation for the next 100 years before the Chinese Communist uprising. They started planting opium, and 2 wars later with the British, their misfortunes would begin. And China would have their radicalisms as well, with the Mao Zedong Communist uprising, the Japanese using it for resources. The farmers wanted quick cash, but they also led themselves down to a path which they could not escape, and that path was opium. And it was quite sad to see what happened to China from there. Right. India. India had a similar issue like China. It had a very dry monsoon season and a a new strain of cholera was found in the Bay of Bengal, and it almost started viciously. It wiped out the entire British detachment that was there and started wiping out the local tribes in the Raj at the time. See a nice little dense woodland that is as well. But as quick as it spread through India, it started travelling across the world and had issues. First detected in Limehouse, London, the cholera landed in Britain and then spread. It wiped out a lot of people in Merthyr Tydfil. Was the Merthyr cholera outbreak, which is something I covered on a Halloween video previously. Would probably cover again in some detail if you would like to hear that story as well. But then it would land on the shores of North America. This would change India completely, and also how we use sanitation, because we weren't a very sanitizing country, because basically if you went to the toilet, it would probably land in a cesspit by the water. I'm going to come back now because it is someone walking. Like I said, without the effects of Tambora, you will be sitting on a cesspit your house is built on. And then the Victorians used the marvel of what the Romans used. Drainage. They used the drain pipes that the Romans used to get rid of waste. And that ended really a lot of the cholera outbreaks. And it changed the world, sanitary-wise. We were much better. We were much cleaner with how we got rid of human waste or just waste in general. And India would still be under British rule. And that should end the main story of the year without summer. But modern literature and art would change, with J.N.W. Turner famously painting a beautiful scene which is considered one of the best pieces of art in history. But then we go back to Switzerland because a monster was born. And I'm going to take you to the graffiti lime kilns to end off this video with that story. Behind me is the graffiti lime kilns, and the best way to end this is where I was talking about the art that was formed in Tambora, because high society was scandaled. Mary Godwin had a partner by the name of Sherry. I forgot his name, I do apologise, I'll put it on the screen. And society was scandalised by it. He was a dashing young writer. But Mary's sister also was being seduced by the dangerous poet and seductive Lord Byron. Forgot his name as well. How can I forget Lord Byron's name? With society scandalising the weather so bad, they decided to take a break to Byron's villa off Lake Geneva. So they travelled away from the poor weather and the scandals that came with British high society, and nearly got stuck in France due to the bad weather. But by the time they got to Geneva, the town was flooded and the lake was breaking its banks. Horrible thunderstorms was occurring at the time as well. So, trapped into Byron's villa, they had to try and entertain themselves. Mary's partner, Percy Shelley, that's his name, wasn't really paying much attention to her, and Byron's physician, doctor, I'll say that, John Polidori, was trying to seduce her, but the 19-year-old Shelley was having nothing of it. To obviously break the tension, because they're all probably going to end up sleeping with each other or fighting, Lord Byron came up with an idea, because the guys were talking about the science of galvanism, which I won't explain because you will understand it the more I talk about this. And the big thing with science of galvanism is reanimation. That's basically where I'm going to leave it at. So Byron came up to all of them saying they need to write a ghost story, a short ghost story. bear in mind, they all absolutely struggled trying to write this, and the only one who had headway was John Polidori, who came up with a story about a dashing undead aristocrat, which would later be adapted into The Vampire. And thanks to that, we would have had Bram Stoker's Dracula. So that's not the main bit of the story. Because Mary went to bed that night with writer's block. But one thing would happen, because Tambora storms were still happening at the time of this happening, and she would see a lightning strike. And in that strike, she saw a face of a reanimated corpse brought back to life by galvanism. The fear that she saw that day, she started jotting down her masterpiece, a modern Prometheus, Frankenstein's monster. And that's where culture has been changed. Mary Shelley created Frankenstein all because of a really bad storm caused by the Tambora eruption, and history has never been the same since. Even John Polidori's Vampire became Bram Stoker's Dracula, or the German masterpiece of Nosferatu, Count Orlok, which has been recently remade by Robert Eggers. We wouldn't have none of this if it was for the eruption of Tambora. And guys, if you did enjoy this video in general, like this little going out and about and telling stories of what happens in history, let me know if you want to see more of this, because I have got a couple of topics I want to do. And obviously this is just trial and error. I'm going to try different ways of filming this, but thank you for watching. Give the video a like, and I'll see you in the next one.